We have apologies from Lee Rahina August and Andrea Rutini. We also have apologies from Deputy Mayor Sadler Footer, and we have Councillor Elams and Nellams. Nice to have you here. Stepping in for South Wairarapa District Council. Okay, so I'll move the apologies that we have. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Connolly. Any discussion? All those in favour say aye, those against no. Declare that carried. Okay, just checking, we do have a few people here. There's no members of the public who wish to speak? No? Okay. We'll now move through to conflict of interest declarations. Any conflicts for members to declare? No? Okay, now moving through to meeting minutes, which is on page 8 of the agenda. Is there any questions relating to the correctness of those minutes from the 24th of May? No? Okay, so I will move those minutes. Do I have a seconder? Mayor Baker? All those in favour say aye. Those against no. Declare that carried. Moving through to item 6, which is local water done well, legislation and water service delivery plan update. Dougal, welcome. Now, you're going to provide us with a bit of an update, then we'll see if there's any questions from members. Over to you.
Kia ora koutou. Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of quick updates from me today. Jack, I think, is just going to bring up a couple of slides. Firstly, in terms of process, the regional process of working together to consider a joint water services delivery plan is going well. We're making good progress. We've had a number of workshops with the Advisory Oversight Group, as many of you will be aware, being members of that group. And that's been informed and supported by ongoing financial modelling, consideration of governance options, transitional principles to inform what a future potential joint arrangement could look like. So we're working to complete a draft report, which will be completed in order to be released by September, and also to consider the requirements for what's needed to work through phase 2, which would focus on the development of a joint water services delivery plan should councils opt to go down that pathway. Key next steps, we have a next meeting with the Advisory Oversight Group on the 9th of August, where we'll bring back a lot of the key findings from the process and respond to some of the questions that have been raised by members in relation to funding and pricing and governance options. And we're also setting up some elected member briefing sessions for the region towards the end of August as well. So there's a session with the joint Wairarapa councils on the 28th of August and a session for other councillors on the 30th of August, which will be in the event centre here next door. So invites for that should go out the next day or two. That will support councils to consider their analysis of options of how they would wish to develop a water services delivery plan, and we anticipate that that would go to elected members for directional decision making around October, and that will also help inform the scope and approach to phase 2. Just moving on to the next slide if I'm able. Just a brief note on the water on Bill 2 report back. So the Finance and Expenditure Select Committee reported back to the House on the 18th of July with quite a number of changes to the proposed bill. They don't substantially change the bill, but they do recommend a number of clarifications. And there's also a number of points that they haven't addressed that we raised in our submissions as a region. So kind of a few points particularly important. The bill does now apply to Greater Wellington as it would to territorial authorities, so that was a really important clarification, and some clarifications that the plan is a one-off process that councils must give effect to, and also it needs to include an implementation plan as well. So our process, we think, still remains really well aligned with the requirements of Bill 2, and our key challenge really is going to be completing that plan within a 12-month period. So getting commitment from councils and confidence from councils that the right approach to development of that plan, whether it's a joint approach or a sub-regional approach or an individual approach, will be a really important step to making progress on that. As noted, there's a few points that we raised that haven't been addressed by the Select Committee report back. In particular, they have not changed or responded to that time frame for completing a plan within 12 months. Still no evidence of financial support for councils to work through this process. It's obviously a big task on top of other commitments councils are making, other costs. No further clarification against privatisation, potentially addressed by Bill 3. So we are still waiting on the details to come out on Bill 3, which may also address some of the issues we raised in relation to how this legal framework gives effect to the treaty and to mana o te wai. But kia ora, thank you, Chair. That's key points.
Thank you, Dougal. Was there any questions from members? No, if there's no questions, then we'll move through to the recommendations, which is simply to receive and note the report. I'll move that. Do I have a seconder? Deputy Mayor Anita Baker. It's usually where my Deputy Mayor sits, sorry. Mayor Anita Baker. All those in favour say aye. Those against no. Declare that carried. Okay, thank you. Now moving through to the company and governance update. This is on page 20 of your agenda. So I'd ask that Tonya Haskell and Nick Leggett, if you'd like to come forward. Now, any comments you'd like to make to the report, and then we can open it up for questions.
Mr. Chair, I've reserved most of my comments for a later item on the agenda. So I think that in terms of operationally, though, Tonya will have... Yeah.
Thank you, Nick. Thank you, Mr. Chair. On the corporate update, there are a few things I wanted to raise. As always, we start with people. We've had a better quarter this quarter on health and safety. We've had no serious incidents. Our engagement scores, although for the year they continue to be higher than last year, we've taken a bit of a dip, and that is largely around some of the confidence in the performance of the organisation. So there are things there, and as well as some of the outcomes of the review we'll look at in terms of picking up that engagement score next year. There have also been people changes to the Alliance. We've taken the opportunity with Kevin Locke leaving his role jointly as GM and Alliance Director to split those two roles. So we now have the Wellington Water function sitting with Charles Barker as acting GM for the Customer Operations Group, and we have a new Alliance Director from Fulton Hogan, Andrew Harvey, who comes to us with 30 years operational experience and recently leading the Tairawhiti Regional Operations team for Fulton Hogan. So we're quite got some confidence going there that we've got a good structure set up. There's also some highlights from the operations for the quarter. For me, one of the nicest things to see, and that's actually thanks to everybody in this room, is the flattening out of the water use curve. For the first time in 5 years, I want to say it's dipping, but my engineers won't let me, but it is flattening out, and that comes from two things. One, that's the additional funding that each council here has tipped in to water loss, but also we're seeing our customers' behaviours that were really good over summer improving this year, which has been fantastic. South Wairarapa will also have fully compliant water treatment plants for the first time this quarter, which is great news, and Taumata Arawai reporting will pick that up. And then our financial year end has also been positive. The capital has come in, these are unconfirmed numbers and subject to audit as always, but our capital deliveries come in at 330 million. Our OPEX spend will be within 1% for the region for the year. And we have saved over $4 million in our own costs, which we'll be able to apply into this year's and next year's operating budgets for the corporate budgets. Sorry, that wasn't very particularly articulate. We'll apply it to our corporate overhead to top up the savings that we've already banked in on the LTP. So that's a great positive for us. Did anyone have any questions on the report?
Thank you. Any questions from members, particularly focused on this report? Of course, we've got the following report coming as our next agenda item. Councillor Connolly.
A couple of partai from me. In the CapEx delivery space, I think this year has been really successful from a Greater Wellington perspective. We're going really well on the Timarua optimisation work. I'm just wondering if you can give an update as to when that might, the outcome of that might come online, because that is quite critical for the summer.
Yes, at this stage, it's looking that we're getting the first tranche of the additional water treatment in February. So it'll still come before that critical part of the year, which is February, March.
Yeah, I know
That's-
that you've pulled out all the stops to
Yes,
get
and
that done, but it would be really great if we could have that online for February. That would just allow breathing room.
Yes, I agree, Ross, thank you.
For the water shortage. You've also done marvellously on the Kaitoki Pipe Bridge, and that's really exciting. And I guess that the crowning jewel has got to have been the Whakawhirinaki Bridge, which was just so great. And every time I drive and walk and cycle past it, which is every day, multiple times, I get a wee buzz because it's so exciting. So that's really, really great, and I'm looking forward to that being open, so we can all start using it, and those of us that get their water from it can start drinking it. In terms of the CapEx delivery, you've got the, at 44, you've got the metres of pipe constructed, and again, this is really, really good news story compared to previous years. I mean, we still really need to increase the pipe construction to about 100 kilometres, and we're sitting at 24. Right. But of that pipe, can you tell me what is just renewals and what is growth new pipe?
I can't, Ross, but we can come back to you with that answer. But that is, yeah.
Because I think that would be a good measure to see, because they're quite different, and in terms of where we're building and allowing for new growth is separate from the renewals.
Right, yeah.
My other just request as we move forward into summer is we've talked a lot about the measures that are being taken to increase the leaks identification and fixing, and the money that's been put into that. And you talk about how that has actually had a material impact on the water. If we could see that in some graphical form, that would be really, really good.
Yep.
You know, it's always felt like we haven't actually been making any progress on the leaks. We've just been stopping things getting worse. So if we could actually see something that's indicating the improvement of that situation, it would again be quite a boost.
Can I just add there? I think it's important, and firstly that the backlog, there were 3,400 leaks in backlog in February. There are now 1,600. So just to put some figures, we can show you graphics around water savings, but the leak repair is not a panacea. It is a patch, and it's just, I want to emphasise that to the committee, because I think it gives us really good some short-term easing, but it is, Ros, as you say, it's the renewals of pipes over time every year that will make the significant difference to that.
I mean, I think that's a really interesting and important point, though. Where do we put our money? And putting the money into leaks is only a Band-Aid, not a very effective Band-Aid, and we should really be focused on renewals. But at the same time, we've got this short-term or medium-term water crisis that we're not going to be able to avoid unless we do something on the leak space. So
which we do.
It does have to be a two-pronged
approach. It needs to be all of the above, doesn't it?
It does, but we can't relax and think that fixing leaks is going to fix acute water shortage risk. That's, yeah.
Just a question from, Mayor Baker did have a question as well first.
It's more of a comment. I actually want to thank the staff on the ground, because our water leaks have gone down significantly and our tank is ahead of schedule. So the workers on the ground are doing a fantastic job, and I just would like to acknowledge that. Thank you.
Yeah, I had a question/comment which was similar, which in the Hutt we've gone from over 800 leaks in the backlog down to 330, which is great progress over that 4 months since we tipped in the additional funding. So that's great to see. Do you want to explain, Tonya, just the work that has been enabled from that additional funding from our council and from other councils as well, in regards to the approach of being able to get those number of leaks down?
Thank you, and I appreciate the comments, because the people on the ground do hear it, and they do love it when they get comments from the mayors in the region. It's fantastic. Thank you. What we've been able to do with the additional funding is set up specialised leak repair crews, and in the Hutt, that's been one of our panel members, a local contractor firm called CCL, and they have set themselves up to monitor, log, find and fix the leaks. We do it, the most efficient way is to send them into an area and they can just do all the leaks one after the other. So instead of our crews, which are highly reactive because we've been going to the biggest leak or the next most important activity, these guys just can focus on what we call a proactive leak management program. So it is efficient, it does work well, and we are seeing the benefits through the numbers. And also, as we are heading through that, we're learning how to be better at it. There are some, back office systems we've been able to improve. We are better at logging the leaks and working out where they are, and then how the teams are going about it. We are looking at how we can make that more efficient each time.
And just checking that, so for us in our long-term plan deliberations, we wanted to make sure there was a buffer in our budget to enable that approach to happen if needed, given Nick's comment around the state of the network and knowing renewals is the true fix. Is there enough in the budgets, I suppose, to allow that particular approach if needed over the longer term, so over the next couple of years?
We believe there is in your budget, Campbell, because that's also the important thing. We can get the numbers down, but we need to maintain it at that level, and to do that we need to have that sustainable resource available to us. So at this point, I believe so. It varies a little council by council, but yeah, every leak in the region assists the region's water supply. So working in Wellington assists how much water is available for the rest of the region. Working in Hutt City has got massive benefits across the region. So every leak helps.
Yeah, I think it would be helpful for us maybe at this table to just understand that regional picture of the approach, just to ensure, because I mean, great, we could be doing that in the Hutt, but if we're not collaborating with all of our councils, then that creates a bit of a challenge on that, that water loss issue as well.
So, why don't I work with you, because it's a similar question to Roz's, isn't it? How do we make sure that we are making that available, the leakage information available at a regional and council level here? Sure, thanks.
Right. Thank you. Any other questions? Mia Whānau.
Just to repeat what a couple of mayors have said, I do want to thank the people on the ground for the work that they've done in reducing the number of leaks. It's no easy job, so just to share Wellington City's appreciation for that.
Thank you for the additional resource.
Okay. If there's no more questions, we'll move to the recommendations, which is simply to receive and note the report. I'll move that. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Connolly, any discussion? All those in favour say aye. Those against no. Declare that carried. Moving through now to item 8, which is the independent review of estimation error, and this is in your supplementary agenda item. So we will have Nick Leggett as chair of the Wellington Water Committee, Kevin Jenkins and Roy Baker as the report writers, and we also have Pat Doherty at the table as well, noting that we do have Mahina Puketapu as a board member online. Roy is online, just to note. Now, what I'm going to do now is just explain the process of how we will deal with this particular paper. So Nick, Kevin and Roy in particular, and Pat, you are more than welcome, will make comments in regards to the report that is in front of us. If there is then any matters of clarification which committee members would like, they can ask that now or after they speak. We will then move into public excluded, and I'll outline the reasons for moving into public excluded when we do that. We will have a discussion then, and then we will move back into public and take the next steps from there around recommendations and any comment. Sound okay? Okay, thank you. I'll pass.
Can you explain why we're going to public exclude? There's absolutely no reason for us to be going into public exclude to discuss this paper.
The reason, Mayor Guppy, is that the public will be excluded from the item under the grounds that it is to protect the privacy of natural persons, and it's important that we are able to do that. So I will pass it now over to the team. Nick, who wants to lead off?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Kia ora koutou. I just will introduce Kevin Jenkins and Roy Baker to you. They were selected by the board to conduct a review on our behalf into the LTP budgetary failure, and also to look at the cultural potential cultural failings in the organisation. You now have that review, and this is an opportunity for Kevin and Roy to verbally talk to their review and for committee members to ask them questions. So, Kevin and Roy, however you...
Tēnā koutou katoa. Roy and I, on behalf of Roy and I, I'd like to thank you very much for the opportunity to present this to you and to engage with you. We don't propose to say much. We think that we've expressed our views in the report, but what we'd like to do is I'll hand it over to Roy, who will talk about our findings, and then he will hand it back to me briefly to talk about the way in which we went about our business, and then over to you. So Roy.
Thank you, Kevin. Look, just start off by, I guess, summarising our key findings. So I think it's important to note that no individual or single process step caused the underestimation of the corporate costs that are capitalised. Rather, we found multiple interrelated causes and significant deficiencies in both structure, systems, processes, and there were issues around strategic leadership as well. How the error was ultimately addressed with shareholder councils has dented councils' trust and confidence in Wellington Water, and a number of our recommendations are to address that particular issue. We found an organisation that was not mature as we'd expected, and one that hadn't kept pace with its growth, especially over the last 3 to 4 years. That's in headcount and also in the large capital program. We found unclear structures and accountabilities and an under-resourced finance and risk function. A culture of not wanting to hear or present bad news and not front-footing issues does exist within water. We think our recommendations are clear and we believe need to be addressed to avoid further failures. The issues we found and are set out over the report, we believe cannot wait for a new water entity to resolve. So I think that's sort of the high-level summary of I guess, our findings. Kevin, do you want to just take the committee through the process?
Yeah, thanks, Roy. So, yeah, just a few more words, really. So obviously we were guided by the terms of reference. That was for obvious reasons. But in doing our work, we also drew on a few other frameworks which sort of get touched on in the report. So it's important when you look at an organisation with the terms of reference like we were given to look at the organisation in the round. So we drew on lightly on a value for money framework, so that's effectiveness, efficiency, economy. Also a maturity assessment, so you've heard mention of whether or not Wellington Water is a mature organisation, and that goes to its structure, its systems and processes, and also culture. And we've expressed a view about that. And another framework that we drew on is around the internal control environment. And specifically, we used an American model called COSO, which is just an acronym for a big American model that's used widely. It's well known. So that looks at the internal control environment, where the checks and balances are and the like. So we didn't follow any of those slavishly. We're simply saying that we drew on some well-known frameworks to help us generate insights. And the last thing I want to say on behalf of Roy and I is that we would like to thank those that we spoke to. We ended up speaking to a lot more people than we anticipated. We had a very short time frame in which to do the review, but we managed nevertheless. It was important, obviously, to speak to those who wanted us to interview them. But despite the short time frame that we had, we are confident that we did understand the big issues that drove the mistake, and we are comfortable that with our recommendations about the important things that are necessary to do to avoid a similar issue occurring in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any questions of clarification that members would like to ask at this point in time? No? Okay. So what we will do now is move that the public be excluded from the item under the grounds under section 48(1) of the Local Government Official Information and Meetings.
I didn't have points of clarification, but I do have some questions that I don't feel probably fall into the public excluded space. So we're up for that at this time. the questions I have, I don't think need to be in public excluded.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Yeah. Sorry. I have more later, but I guess one of the questions I have is, in terms of the actual shortfall, how confident are you that we now understand the full, I guess, scope of the shortfall and yeah, has there been any review of the actual numbers that we're talking about, a peer review of the numbers that have finally been presented, and can we have confidence that they are actually accurate?
I'll let Roy answer that.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. Look, we didn't conduct a forensic examination of the numbers, but I can say that the assumptions that the Wellington Water used to determine the 51 million was a reasonable approach. But you'll note that we have two recommendations there in particular. One is to actually go and have a look in detail at the major projects and even the renewal programs to make sure that the actual numbers do reflect the appropriate percentage. And then at the end of that, to make sure that the total of that will cover the estimated $30 million, which is the capitalised costs that you're looking to achieve in each year going forward. So I would say that you would need to conduct that detailed explanation to be comfortable that the 51 million was adequate. At a high level, I suspect that individual projects will be different to what the assumptions have been made. But which ones in particular, you only can find that out by going through the detail. I am aware of one particular council where there will be an issue that will come out, I guess, as the costs start to fall. And that's why the recommendations are such that to conduct that exercise, determine whether in fact there is the appropriate amount of corporate cost allocated to each project so that there are no more surprises with councils. And I did note that a number of papers that went to the board in the latter part of the year still had the 6% showing as for major projects. So clearly those will need to be allocated out to the 10%. Does that cover your question,
Yes.
Councillor?
Thank you. I wonder, Chair, if we need a recommendation just around assurance of those numbers. I know councils have already done their LTPs and locked in, the numbers as they had them, but, I still feel like there's a bit of residual doubt around what numbers have actually been presented, which is somewhat separate to the substantive matters in the review.
Just ask if Wendy, if you wanted to make any comment to that. I suppose this is the challenge of the role of the committee versus individual councils, understanding those numbers and the projects that impact them. But it's a fair point.
Yes, I suppose this committee is a shareholders representative. Your job is to provide direction to the board, who will provide direction to the organisation. It's the level of detail that you choose to go to on all of those things. I think the report is very clear that this is a system issue, and there would be some risk perhaps in getting into particular details. You may miss some of the system issues. So it's entirely in your hands how you frame those recommendations. But typically you would direct the board to get into that detail.
I guess I don't mind if it comes from this committee. I guess I would be suggesting to my council that more work was done and more assurance was provided around those numbers, just so we can be sure, and other councils may want to do the same. Another question I have is, you note in your report that the Wellington Water Limited management downplayed the problem to the board, and that the chair was aware of it, but not aware of the size or scale of the problem. Do you think that that Wellington Water has a problem in terms of identifying, I guess, had a problem specifically to this in identifying the seriousness of this problem and the seriousness of the issues that perhaps Wellington Water was facing. I guess the underlying message to my question is the fact that I've been very critical of the response to the fluoride inquiry, and your report also notes that there were a lot of parallels between the fluoride inquiry. And at a number of subsequent meetings, Wellington Water Management tried to shut down the fluoride inquiry, saying, we've done it, it's done.
We are starting to navigate very much away from sort of questions of clarification, and I would encourage that we can have this discussion next, and there will be an opportunity afterwards to come back into public.
Well, I'm not asking specific questions.
Well, there's a lot of commentary in that. There's not questions.
That's
So
why
if you could just
I
ask a
said this
question.
is not clarification. These are questions about the report that I don't believe need to be held in private exclusion.
Well, that's okay, but as I outlined the process, this is around questions of clarification.
So where do we get to ask general questions?
Yep, that opportunity will come.
Why does that need to be in public excluded?
There will also be an opportunity post-public excluded
Okay.
to come back into
All right,
public.
okay.
Okay. As I outlined at the start. Mayor Whānau?
My questions are of the same nature as Councillor Connolly, so I will ask them again when we come back into public.
Okay, that's no problem. So I'm going to now move us into public excluded under the grounds...
Chair, can I have it recorded this meeting? I don't believe we need to be going into public excluded. This smacks of report after report. There's a cover-up again. We've had the fluoride report, we had the field force report that this committee did not want to address. And to not to discuss this in public is disgraceful.
The reason this report is in public, it has been produced, there is good reason for us to go into public excluded for a period of time, and there will be an opportunity for members to make comment or to ask their questions as you have in public if you wish to at the end. Okay? So there is nothing that has been stopped enabling you to do that. So I will now move that the public be excluded from the item under the grounds under the Local Government Official Information Meetings Act to protect the privacy of natural persons, that Nick Leggett, Kevin Jenkins and Rory Baker joining via Zoom be permitted to remain after the public section of the meeting as they have knowledge of the matter that will assist the committee in relation to this item. And also Pat Doherty, thanks. Okay, so I'll move that. Do I have a seconder? Mayor Baker, any discussion? All those in favour say aye. Those against no. Declare that carried. Okay, we'll just give ourselves